Welcome, friends. I'm Gina Nicole, and this is the Goddess Channel, where we awaken our spiritual awareness, connect from our hearts, and amplify goodness in the world through channeled messages we co-create together with Spirit. Today's message comes from Archangel Metatron, and it invites us into a deeper, higher remembrance. So if you've ever found yourself listening to spiritual teachings about dark versus light, ascension, or battling type energies, this transmission is going to offer you somewhat of a shift, a reframe, a remembrance that moves you beyond polarity and into your truth. So let's begin. When we're talking about dark and light, and dark versus light, and ascension, and all of this stuff like it's a battle, we're really approaching it from a fourth dimensional perspective, a fourth dimensional frequency experience. And I know that this has come through a lot on this channel, but it's so that you can see the difference between different levels of your perspective, right? So Metatron has a message today along these lines. And the higher understanding here is that when you're listening to intuitives who talk about this, it's not that they're wrong. If people are talking about the dark versus the light and all of this type of stuff, it's not that they're wrong. From a fourth dimensional perspective of reality, it's valid. But the purpose of the Goddess Channel is to invite you into a fifth dimensional 5D perspective of reality, which is heaven on earth, which is unity consciousness, because that's what we're here to anchor as the first wave of ascension. We're here to rise above the frequency of the collective and demonstrate a higher experience of reality by embodying it ourselves. And that's the important thing here. I'm going to say that again. We're here to rise above the frequency of the collective to demonstrate a higher frequency experience of reality by embodying it ourselves first. That being said, from this higher perspective, it's not about good and bad. It's not about right and wrong. It's not even about light and dark. It's about the frequency of the thing. It always is. And when we look at frequency, rather than passing judgment, here's what's happening. What some would assess or judge or label as dark forces is not some cartoonishly evil collective as it would seem to be. These are souls. These are light beings of Creator, just like you or I. But these souls, rather than continuously choosing light, have continuously chosen small compromises of their character, small tendencies into the gray area, into moral ambiguity. They are the ones who have been willing to turn a blind eye again and again for some external reward or benefit. And remember, these always start out as small choices. But when a soul makes these small moral compromises, seemingly trivial at the time, they add up. And there is usually an intervention point, a point where things come to a head, a choice point where they can choose the light or they can choose blatant compromise. And when they choose light, there's often a redemption arc available. There is struggle, often a loss of material goods, but there is spiritual relief. There is spiritual redemption, and there's an upward arc available. But when they double down on compromise, moral compromise we're talking about here, they tend to distort their reality beyond repair in this lifetime in order to stay the course with lower frequency choices to keep up their external rewards. But notice there is a different type of struggle. It's constantly identifying with ego. Thus, they never feel satisfied. There is a spiritual detachment that happens. So it's not like these people choose moral compromise and then they're happy because they've got the material riches. No, they just enter into a different type of struggle without relief that doesn't include satisfaction and that spiritually detaches them from themselves. So you can see, from a fifth dimensional perspective, a unity consciousness perspective, we can see the scale of consciousness. We can see these frequency choices being made that lead souls down one path or another, which makes our light work at this time even more important, because light triggers a remembrance of light. So when we see beings who are on the fence, literally on the fence, at that choice point, light can trigger them to remember the light within them. When we anchor light, we hold that frequency for others to turn towards it too. Not all will, and that's okay. That's not in our control. But this is our light work. And all of that being said, like we touched on earlier, part of anchoring unity consciousness is rising above polarity, rising above good versus bad, right versus wrong, light versus dark, etc. Seeing the bigger picture, which is every soul plays a perfect role in the evolution of consciousness, in playing out every frequency experience, yet ultimately always returning to the light, even when the journey spans lifetimes. Our job isn't to be mad at the natural evolution of consciousness. It isn't to fight the process. Instead, it's to have grace and love and compassion for the journey. By treating ourselves with love and compassion and grace, and then extending that to others, some will be able to receive it, some won't. Which means, as spiritually conscious beings, we must also rise above being martyrs. We can no longer sink down to the level of others to try to heal them. We can no longer lower our standards or allow ourselves to be spiritual punching bags for others. Literally, we must hold the higher vibrational frequencies rather than lowering ourselves to try to connect on lower frequencies. This is the nuance here. We are not here to make people comfortable. We are here to be ourselves and remind others of who they are without feeling like we need to harm, lower, or compromise ourselves to do it. And there's that word again, compromise. Whether we are compromising ourselves to justify moral ambiguity or compromising ourselves to justify morally righteous behavior, all of that is the old paradigm. All of it. We're transmuting and rising above all compromise for truth. We're rising above any spiritually justified distortion of reality, just as much as we're rising above any ego-justified distortion of reality. It's all part of the path. So just breathing here, you may not have taken in all of the words that I said just there. That's okay. It's about the energy. Let the energy rewrite those old paradigms in you. And you may want to come back and listen to this again as well, if you feel called. So thank you for receiving this message today. If it resonated with you, I invite you to like the video, and maybe even share it with others who are anchoring the new consciousness. And of course, you can subscribe to the channel for more transmissions, as well as download the Goddess Activation 2.0 for deeper alignment with the Divine Feminine Awakening. So hold the light, hold the grace, hold the remembrance. You're doing amazing. I love you.